We turn now to look at a stunning new expose on how Israel's using artificial intelligence to draw up targets and how Israel's loosened its constraints on attacks that could kill civilians. One former intelligence officer says Israel's developed a, quote, mass assassination factory. In one case, sources said the Israeli military approved an assassination strike on a single Hamas commander, despite knowing the strike could kill hundreds of Palestinian civilians. Another source told 972 magazine, quote, nothing happens by accident. When a 3-year-old girl is killed in a home in Gaza, it's because someone in the army decided it wasn't a big deal for her to be killed, that it was a price worth paying in order to hit another target. Everything is intentional. We know exactly how much collateral damage there is in every move, unquote. 972 also reports the Israeli military knowingly attacked civilian targets, including apartment complexes, universities, and banks, in an effort to exert, quote, civil pressure on Hamas. We're joined in Jerusalem by the Israeli investigative reporter Yuval Abraham. His latest report for 972 magazine and Local Call is headlined, A Mass Assassination Factory Inside Israel's Calculated Bombing of Gaza. Yuval, thanks for joining us again from Jerusalem. If you can talk about who your sources are and what exactly they're using, the Israeli military is using AI for. Explain this idea of a mass assassination factory.
So I've spoken to 7 Israeli intelligence officers, some of them current, some of them former intelligence officers. All of them took part in wars against Gaza, in bombing campaigns, whether right now or in 2021, 2022, and 2014. And the use of artificial intelligence is an increasing trend that the army is adopting to mark targets in Gaza. And I think a good year to look at, to understand its beginning with relation to Gaza is 2019, when the Chief of Staff, Aviv Kochavi, introduced this new division in the military called the Targets Division. And its idea was to bring together hundreds of soldiers and basically start to develop these AI algorithms and automated software to accelerate the target creation for strikes with life and death consequences in Gaza. And you know, a source that actually took part in this division center said that they were being judged not by the quality of the targets that they were producing, but by the quantity. That the idea here was that if you want to create a certain shock effect, if you are fighting against a guerrilla group like Hezbollah in Lebanon and or Hamas in Gaza, the source said that this shock effect is the way Israel views its war tactic against these organizations, and part of that is trying to accelerate the creation of targets. Now, in 2014, which was the previous biggest Israeli assault on Gaza, according to sources that I've spoken with, the Israeli military ran out of targets after roughly 3 weeks, and that operation lasted for 50 days. And sources have described a sense that in previous operations that the military just runs out of targets to bomb, and alongside that there is some political pressure or some need to continue the war, to create a victory image for the Israeli public, to work, you know, to apply more pressure. And I think this increasing use of artificial intelligence, this acceleration of target creation, in part is a response to that problem, to running out of targets. And what we know now from sources is that target production using these programs, one of them is called the Gospel, and according to sources, it does facilitate this mass assassination factory that I can get into in a moment. But the rate of creating the targets is now faster than the rate that Israel is able to bomb the targets. And in this targets division, according to the Army's sources, already 12,000 targets were created during this war in this targets division, using these artificial intelligence tools, which is too much, two times as many targets as were bombed in the entirety of the 2014 war, which lasted for 51 days. I have three things that I really want to say, and I really want people to listen to them. The first is that the very real war crimes that Hamas has committed, killing people, some of them I knew, massacring people, do not justify Israeli war crimes in Gaza that are being committed. That's number one. Number two, this idea that the military is doing whatever it can to keep civilians in Gaza safe, or that it is using its technology to not harm civilians in Gaza, is false. It's not true. And I know this not only from looking at the catastrophic killing of so many civilians in Gaza, but also by speaking to intelligence sources who have told me that now all of the previous restrictions that were already permissive into harming civilians have been dramatically loosened. For example, one source spoke about how you get sort of this approximation of where a target is, and it's not pinpointed. And yet soldiers will still strike it, knowingly killing families and civilians to save time in getting a more accurate pinpointing of the target. It's very important that people understand that, and this is according to 5 sources that I've spoken with in Israeli intelligence, in all of the target files that Israel is bombing right now, the amount of civilians that are likely to be killed is written down. So again, it's not a mistake, as you've quoted in the beginning of the piece, in the beginning of the narration, Amy. When a child is killed in Gaza, it's because somebody made a decision that this killing was worth it to hit another target. And there are internal regulations that the army has created that regulate this. And so it's very clear to me that after October 7th, there is a total disregard for Palestinian civilian life, even when hitting targets that are either not distinctly military in nature. The third and final thing, and this goes back to the idea of a mass assassination factory, is that there is a systematic policy, according to sources, of targeting private residential homes of Hamas or jihadi operatives when they are in these private homes, when they are in these buildings or private residencies. And just so you understand, I mean, what this means is that the military is knowingly dropping a bomb that weighs a ton or often more on a residential building in order to assassinate one person, knowingly killing that person's family and neighbors in the process, when according to sources, in the vast majority of cases, these buildings are not places where there is military activity that is being conducted. It is an assassination against somebody who is in Hamas or Jihad's military brigades, but they are not in a military place. One source who was particularly critical of this a policy said that he thought it was like if Israel would bomb, if a Palestinian militant group would bomb the homes of Israelis, not when they are wearing their army uniform, but when they are going back home in the weekend, and essentially assassinating them through the bodies of their families or their neighbors, and then saying that they use those families as human shields. The civilian devastation that is happening right now in Gaza, you have to understand that it's a consequence of a particular Israeli war policy. It is a war policy that has a very loose interpretation of what a military target is, also attacking people in civilian spaces. It is a war policy that centers on deterrence and hitting these power targets that are intended to place civilian pressure on Hamas. And it is a war policy that is increasingly being helped by the use of big data, automation software, and AI. And again, I don't know everything. I've only spoken to several sources, but my evidence suggests that many of the civilians who are being killed in Gaza are being killed as a result of these policies that I do not think are justifiable policies. International law experts would call them war crimes.